We are going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and those of you who are attending online. I'd like to welcome this morning Dr. Scott Porter. Scott and I have known each other since we were just recounting the middle 90s. Scott was a medical student, and I was a trainee at the same location. And it was obvious at that point that Scott was going to accomplish a lot of great things. And that was obvious to everyone. Since that time, Scott has gone on to a distinguished career, and I'm just going to try and hit the highlights. He did his undergraduate work. He grew up in Cleveland. He did his undergraduate work at Morehouse in Atlanta. Then he went to medical school at Yale. From there, he did his orthopedic training at Carolinas. He went on to an oncology fellowship at University of Chicago. He subsequently was on the staff at the University of Mississippi for several years and is now settled in at University of South Carolina in Greenville, where he is the vice chair. Other leadership positions he's had include in our American Board of Orthopedic Surgeons, which is essentially our licensure body. He's had leadership roles in the AOA and ACORD, which is our residency training body. He's also obviously accomplished a lot in the arena of sarcoma, and he is a well-known presenter in areas related to diversity and sarcoma. Scott came and met with us started yesterday afternoon, actually. Yeah. Met with a bunch of us last night and actually got up pretty early on East Coast time this morning and made a little bit of audible and some changes to his talk. So please join me in welcoming Scott for our talk this morning.
So yeah, I appreciate it, and Tom and I have known each other a long time, and so it's fun to be here. Charlie Saltzman is another person that I know very well and truly love as a mentor and love him as a friend, and so I've really looked forward to coming, and so this is going to be interesting. After meeting with some people yesterday and talking, and I walk away from this. So I spent a lot of money on my suits, and I want you guys to see all of this. And so after talking yesterday, when you go and you visit a place, or at least I do, I kind of look at the websites, and I kind of look to see what they're showing, because websites either are something people care a lot about, they put a lot of energy into, and they tell a big story, or it's the complete opposite. Rarely is it in the middle. Either way, the recipient of that information, in their mind, at least to me, tells a story. And so I was learning a story when I was looking at everyone's face sheets and pages, and then I met with the chair of ortho yesterday, and changed some things. So this was the original talk because I sent Tom and some others a list of things that I'd done in the past, and they liked this title. I like this title because it's absolutely meaningless. I put these words together just because I dislike them all very much, and I'll explain to you why I do, which is a little bit weird that a DEI guy is saying they hate these words, but I truly hate these words. And so we'll talk about that, but there is going to be a little bit of an audible. So I've got nothing to disclose, no hidden interest or ulterior motives. This has nothing to do with the board, with the ACGME. I'm on the Ortho RRC. I own a company. It has nothing to do with that as well. But here's, I think, the really good housekeeping stuff, because the other stuff is what you have to do when you for CME credit. This is the stuff that I care about. So I admittedly am the owner of tons and tons of biases. I have this slide for every talk because it's true. The difference between me and most individuals out there in the medical community is that as a black male, I'm given a pass, and I can say my biases a lot. And not very many people out there are going to challenge them. If I said my same biases as a white male, I'd be vilified and excommunicated. I recognize that. sometimes enjoy that, but I recognize that. Unwittingly and sometimes enjoyably, I perpetrate microaggressions. My residents would say goes to intermediate or even macroaggressions. I accept that. Most importantly, first-generation black college graduate who can easily trace roots to slavery. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And I've done pretty decently in academics. And so I'm very blessed by that, and I recognize that my perspective on life is framed by that. It's funny when I go into rooms with patients, the residents laugh because I can don a dialect in the South that many of them cannot. And they will say, how do you do this, this, that, or the other? Well, my grandmother couldn't read or write. And so when you're speaking to Granny and you're using big words, well, you're liable to get a slap or whatever. And so anyone out there who is a first-generation person knows that. You don't talk big when you go home. So you learn these things, and I'm actually very proud of that. And so that is the background of the housekeeping, but here is the goal. And I never have some massive goal because I'm only here an hour. Like seriously, we have these goals because of CME. What am I going to tell a room of total strangers in an hour that is going to be lasting and meaningful? Let's just be serious about that. In a room, and I don't know how many people are on Zoom, if there are 3 or 4 people that get it and that have truly been altered, even minusculely, by what I say, that's a win. The thought that all of these people are going to somehow change their lives because of a 60-minute time period together, it's ridiculous. And quite honestly, the majority of people are here because someone told them to be here. No one ever stands up and says, yay, diversity lecture, I'm going to the diversity lecture, especially if you are one of the assaulted genders and assaulted racial classes in this country for diversity. So let's just be honest about that. And I say all that because my hope is, on that backdrop, I wonder if I can just create one aha moment in someone. Because I think it's the aha moments that do last. So that's the goal, just to create an aha moment. I don't know what I sent the CME office, and so whatever that is, you can read it, and that's the goal for your CME credit. But the real goal is to create an epiphany, which is a fantastic word. So, and the way that I do that is, I'm a big fan of lack of comfort. There are very few opportunities for growth and learning when you are comfortable. And the unfortunate truth of the matter is we have entirely too many people that go through life without ever having to be uncomfortable. And in exchange, what I try to do is make myself as uncomfortable as possible, because when you are uncomfortable, you do one of two things. You either lean into that lack of comfort, or you run away from the lack of comfort. You rarely ever stay in that position of uncomfort. You do one or the other. If you run away from the lack of comfort, I have no interest in, we can have a bourbon or a cup of coffee, but I really have very little interest in you. If you lean into that lack of comfort, well then, that's a fun relationship. So what I'm asking is, when we are having these conversations, the interesting thing is, do we approach this with defensiveness, or do we approach this with curiosity and trying to address the lack of comfort? So anything concerning diversity is tough. It's hard, it's dangerous, people get offended, all of those things. The beauty is no one in this room is paying my mortgage, has my DNA, or has my last name, and so I got a flight tomorrow morning at 7:30. If I offend someone, I got a flight tomorrow morning at 7:30. So we're going to have a little bit of a presentation, and then quite honestly, I enjoy the dialogue after the presentation. Because my hope is aha moment questions that are real questions and not the fake kind of questions that you have to ask somebody in a diversity. We want to do, how do we get more women? How do we get more? Those are not real questions. So, and having never been in Utah except one other time, I can't answer how you recruit better to Utah. I don't know. But we can have some meaningful conversations about a lot of this. And so background. So I read this online. This is part of the Audible, because I wasn't putting this in the original talk until, like I said, I met with some people. And so I wanted to understand a little bit about Utah. So I looked you guys up, and there was this great article in this family medicine journal. And what struck me as very interesting is the term exceeding expectations. And I made a little mental note, exceeding expectations, and then you could read down at the bottom about the physician workforce. And so 1.6% Latinx, 0.5% Black, 24% of it. But we're exceeding expectations. And so I found that as odd. And then I went and looked at, this is what you guys have on your campus, and this is as of 2021. The goal for diversity is always parity, right? 50-50, we should be equally represented. So somehow we've overshot, which I find very interesting, because we've overshot at my institution, we've overshot at a lot of institutions. I gave a grand rounds at one prestigious organization in the Midwest, and they were proudly saying that their numbers, and my question to them was, what are we doing to get more males, because that's not parity. And the guy kind of looked, well, it's not, look, this is not parity. So I find that interesting in a conversation where numbers seem to be what we strive, 50%. Like, I'm assuming that you guys have some big marketing campaign that is primed and ready to go to get more males, because you've overshot. This is the numbers. I love the fact that if you look, it always adds up to 100%. And the numbers of white folks have gone down 11%. The numbers of Hispanics have gone up 13%. I don't know numerator over denominator, but from game theory, that's a classic zero-sum game where one person's gains are achieved at the losses of someone else. I find that interesting, because we try to debate that we need more of something, 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 but we never, ever listen to how is it that the other side is going to give up something. Because in a zero-sum game, that's exactly what you have. If on the one hand, we need a physician's workforce that looks like us, that looks like the community they serve. What if you're in a state of 30% minorities, like you are in South Carolina? What white folks are going to give up their spot in medical school? Who in this room who has kids that are going into medical school, that have been in medical school, called the dean of that medical school and said, make sure that you don't give a spot to Johnny because Jesus needs the spot? Who would have ever done that? Funny sidebar, I did get a call from somebody, a dean, I was program director, who was big into this and was big into women's rights, big. Never got a call from her until her son wanted to get into orthopedics. And so in my mind, my question to her was, you didn't have any female med students that you wanted to get into orthopedics? Why are you calling me for your son? And if I let your son in, then there's got to be someone else that I'm not letting in. So it's a zero-sum game, right? But we never talk about that. We never talk about that. This is your male to female ratio for the entire grad school. That's close to parity. Racial demographics. This is interesting. Anytime you go and give a talk and your presence increases the number by a whole % or more, I find that very, very interesting. So if we left the room right now, the percentage of black folks would drop significantly. Right? I just find it as funny. It's nothing serious. I find it as funny. But it's true. We're 62. I think I saw one of them at dinner last night. And so I find that to be odd, especially when the denominator is as large as it is. It's just odd. So here's a legitimate question, I think. If you, we, whoever is exceeding expectations, why do we care? Like, why is it necessary to have these conversations if we're exceeding expectations? In exchange, shouldn't we be listening to whatever it is that individuals are doing to exceed expectations? And I don't mean that tongue-in-cheek or trying to get cheeky. I mean that in all seriousness. Why care? Right? We've been battling this diversity thing for 100 years. We haven't figured out what it is. I've got this one talk I give where I looked up, I was born in 1971, I looked up race articles 1971, and the highlights of articles in the New York Times and other places could have been the highlights of, or the titles of articles today. So what has changed in my 51 years? I don't know, and I ask that in all seriousness. What has changed? And so, to me, this is still elusive, and if we have found the holy grail of diversity, then we need to champion that. But then that begs the question, how do we define diversity here? And how do we define expectations? And within that how, who gets to define the expectations, right? So it's very interesting. I would submit, as would HBR, that we ain't doing a good job. And so this was the original talk, and we're going to have a little bit of an audible. I love when Tom said that. So we're going to do an audible, and let's talk a little bit about this. So again, because all I was going to do with this is just make fun of those words and make some people laugh, maybe. But this, I think, is going to be a little bit more interesting. So let's talk about that. So this is what I'm going to throw out there. There's an argument to be made that collectively our diversity efforts have at best underperformed, and at worst, miserably failed. That's my position statement. I don't know if anyone would argue against that, and I would submit if one does, then we would have to have a conversation about the lens through which they see the world, because we would see them through different lenses. When you are looking at my life, it's not better than 1971 from many things. From many other things it is, and we'll talk about that. So the question though is why have they miserably failed? And this is the beauty, I think, of where we're going to go with this talk. One, I don't think we can agree on the definitions of any of these important terms. That's why I hate them. If you ask a room like this to write down what the definition of bias is, you will not get a common answer. If you ask this room what the definition of diversity is, you will not get a common answer. If you ask this room what the definition of fill in the blank is, you will not get a common answer. If you ask these same individuals the definition in public versus in private, you will oftentimes get differing answers. Because right now in our society, we vilify heirs of the head as if they're heirs of the heart. So you're going to get a different answer because most people, having had myriad lectures like this, have learned those buzzwords of what they should say. Ask any white male about microaggressions or implicit bias, they will give you some textbook answer. So I don't think that we can have a true conversation about this until we get some good definitions, right? So microaggressive, implicit biases, and privileges, I tried to throw as many words together. So microaggression, right? What exactly is a microaggression? And can people actually have microaggressions versus flat-out aggressions? I don't think that we have microaggressions. I think that microaggressions is actually a goal. Microaggressions to me are the aggressions that occur when you don't understand that they are aggressive. Perfect example, and I've said this story many times. My oldest graduated from their public or their private Christian school. The valedictorian is a white man. Valedictorian gets up, starts his speech. I know, or whatever it was, I know that the mothers and fathers and grandparents in the audience are very proud of the graduate, or something along those lines. And I remember I leaned over to my wife and I said, well, that kid clearly doesn't know that there are a lot of individuals that are raised by their auntie. There are a lot of individuals that are raised by their older sibling. There are a lot of individuals that are raised by foster parents in my community. But in the rich white community that this kid grew up, it's mommy and daddy, and grandparents are around. Now, the kid didn't mean anything by that. The kid's lens at the age of 18 was just mommy and daddy and friends of wealth. That's a microaggression. When I am in the ER and I am rolling my eyes because someone is LGBT or someone is heavily tattooed or someone is a whatever, that's not a microaggression. That's an I don't like you aggression that we hide behind by using the term microaggression. Microaggression is the goal. Because a microaggression is something that we can't control. A microaggression is something that we can't control because we are ignorant to its presence. And aggression is something that we can control, but we choose not to because we have cute words like microaggression to hide behind. So, implicit bias. I love this saying. I have no idea who it's from, and so there is no reference, but we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Versus bias. It's not that I don't like it. Oh, wait. It is. I just don't like it. Man, if we could admit this, how much better we would be with our conversations. Because this is a fantastic starting point for a conversation. Privilege. Versus equity. Right? Privilege and equity had definitions before we started this DEI debate. I've never understood how it is that you can have such a beautiful word, privilege, B-L, it's a beautiful sounding word, and it's been hijacked. And if you say the word privilege in front of white males, PTSD, right? PTSD, as if white females don't have nearly the same privilege. One of my fondest, I love this golf course, the Ocean Course at Kiowa. So we have the opportunity to play it once a year, and I'll go down and I'll play. And I love 17 holes of it. I hate the 18th hole. Anyone a golfer? Anyone have you ever watched the US Open at Kiowa? So the 18th hole is a beautiful hole, and it ends right next to the clubhouse. And so every time I've played, and I've played 3 times now, every time I've played, when we come up to the 18th hole, the number of looks that I get from not only the white males, but the white females with their white children as they're playing, they got big games and chessboards and stuff, giving the second look, not like they're saying I shouldn't be there, but they're certainly shocked that I am there. I hate that. Now, I go every year because of the other 17 holes, and it's an amazing course. But the 18, I hate. So privilege isn't something that just white males have, and we have to have that conversation. Privilege isn't something that eludes many of us. A lot of us do have it. We just vilify one particular group of people for having it. So everyone sees things through their own lenses. And if you ask these individuals the definitions of any of these words, would you ever get the same thing? And the answer is no. Of course you wouldn't get the same thing. So why can't we have a conversation about the definitions first, right? Why? So words matter until they don't. And I think that the exhaustive use of words like microaggression, implicit bias, etc., have done much more to harm self-reflection, introspection, and debate, which I think are necessary for emotional growth, than they have to enlightened individuals at whom these words are oftentimes literally thrown. And an unintended consequence, I think, is scapegoating the tribalism that naturally plagues a multicultural society. Naturally plagues. There is nothing wrong in my mind. I want to play golf with 3 dudes. Why is that a bad thing? If I want to do that, why is that a bad thing? Now, I am all for anyone playing golf. But when I play golf, I want to use language that I don't have to watch. I want to tell jokes about things that I don't have to get vilified for. Why is that a negative? Tribalism is real and it is natural. I give it on my wife all the time when she goes out for coffee. And for years I've been saying, I'm just going to bomb your little coffee date because I'm never allowed to go. It's tribalism. It's all tribalism. Tribalism is only bad, I think, when you put your tribe above someone else's. When you make your tribe exclusive. When you put down someone else's tribe. Tribalism is a natural thing. Anytime anyone has gone to college, people that look alike flock together. It's not a negative. We've made it a negative. And in making it a negative, we can't address the fact that there are tribalism happenings where one tribe is putting down the other. That is where we should be focusing our effort, not on something that is as natural as me and him. If I'm in a room, the first person I'm looking for is someone that looks like him. Is that bad? In this room, is that bad? When I go to the AOA meetings, is that bad? So I think that these words have made much more palatable the uncomfortableness that is necessarily evoked when one confronts the negative tendencies of tribalism. That's what those words do. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. But without agreed upon definitions of these terms, whose definitions are we going to use to set our expectations? And most importantly, whose definitions do we use to define success? Whose definition? Because if you agree that they have different definitions, you have to agree that someone's got to be the definition setter. Someone has to be the one whose definition you use. Everyone's got a definition, just like everyone has an opinion. But man, there are some opinions that are more important than others. So, as an example, that's how the AOA defined diversity. And this was the last meeting I attended. This is how they define diversity. Someone gets to define it. The funny thing is that it's rarely in positions of power people that look like me that get to define it. It's rarely in positions of power people that roll their R's natively that get to define it. So who gets to define it? And so second last thing. I think that few are willing to inject vulnerability into this conversation. It is vulnerability that I think we need to see past the crap that we talk to one another. There has been more done, I think, for diversity through interracial dating, marriage, and childbirth than any lecture on earth. Because the second that someone holds their grandchild of a different race, vulnerable. So we need to try to find a way to manufacture some vulnerability. So this is my vulnerability. So that's my grandfather's grave. You can note the dates. So for some reason, the Portermen have children late. My dad was born in 36. So my grandfather, obviously I never met him, but I took my kids to Luverne, Alabama, which is where that grave is, where my dad was born and raised, Luverne, Alabama, so that I could just kind of teach them about where they come from. Unfortunately, we don't have roots that go back to Italy or blah, blah, blah. We have roots that go back to a slave ship that entered into New Orleans. I have no idea before that. So this is his grave, and this is for my benefit. I had to prove that I was black. So how do you prove you're black? You can't. It's not on any document. And so I'm on the Zoom call during COVID. So I'm on the Zoom call, and the woman says, because I had to get my minority business designation. So the woman says, you need this, you need this, you need this, and then we have to have confirmation that you're black. And so I always keep a cloth for my glasses, and so on that I got my little cloth out, and I did this, and I wiped the camera, and I recentered it, and she starts to chuckle, and she says, "Well, no, we need physical proof." And so then I keep a picture of my parents on my desk, and I got the picture and I showed it to her, and now she's really laughing, and she says, "No, it has to be like a birth certificate or something." What she didn't know, and if you guys, anyone in the room who was born after 68, if you check your birth certificate, race isn't on there. They took race off of the birth certificate. I had to get my parents' birth certificates to prove that I was black. So my dad's birth certificate, this is what it shows. And the coolest thing is, the second page is the signature. And there is a signature that is as nice as could possibly, my grandmother couldn't read or write. And whoever the nurse was, or the midwife, signed Dolly. I think it was just really cool. So anyways, on this though, this is the occupation of my grandfather. So that is the occupation of a black person at the turn of the century. So, who in this room knows or knew their grandparents? Raise your hand if you met your grandparents. Raise your hand if you met your great-grandparents. So, my great-grandparents were born in 1863. My great-grandparents, the people that you guys knew, were born in 1863. I was sitting around talking to my dad once, about 2 years ago. My daughter had to go to this field trip. My dad is asking about this field trip. They had to go to a slave cabin, and it hit me. I said, "Dad, when were your grandparents born?" And he said, "Oh, shit, I don't remember." And I said, "Well, when did they die?" And he said, "Oh, they died in the 40s, near the war." I said, "Well, how old were they?" Because my grandmother and his mother died at 100. And he said, "Oh, shit, they were easily well in their 90s. I said, "Well, Dad, they were born slaves." And he said, "Yeah, I guess so." That was it. I was trying to have this big moment with him. So I found that to be very interesting. And this is the family. That's my grandmother. And this was 20 years ago. That's my dad, upper left. And what's not pictured is their oldest brother, who was murdered in Ohio right before I was born. And so Granny raised them all. And Granny was a gangster. Granny was mean as a rattlesnake, just like that picture would suggest. And this is where she raised him. So that's vulnerable. This is where she raised him. So we went back, and it's funny. I have this picture hanging in my house. I can assure you that my house doesn't look like this. I have this picture hanging in my house. My dad and at the time his two living brothers came to the house, and it was awesome because they had never seen a house like that. So they come to the house, and I've got this picture hanging, and you've got three 80-plus-year-olds arguing about, was this the house they grew up in, was this the school they went to, or was this the neighbor's house? And I wish I could have recorded it because none of them could remember. But it's still I love it, vulnerability. So this is where I go. So this is my vulnerability. We have no generational wealth. No way to amass generational wealth. No one in my family went to college. In the 40s, when my dad moved up north, he began working in the steel mills, and then he moved over to GM, got his 30 years, and that was it. We had no lake house, no beach house, no farmhouse, no other house to go to escape, no house to meet friends. We had the house we lived in, and that was the only house. No trips to Europe, no trips to the Caribbean, no trips to any of those things. I did not leave the country until I was a resident. I did not leave the Northeast with the exception of going to Alabama until I was a med student. No private lessons for anything, no country club, no law school tests at the ACT, MCATs, GMAT, or anything else, no tutors for those things, no Kaplan courses, none of that, no college legacy, no one making a phone call, no one would take a phone call from an uneducated security guard. No one calling on my behalf, no in-house counsel, no talent, no tutoring. Uncle that did prison time, another one that was murdered. Told by my high school counselor that I not made it in college. Boy, was she wrong. My Yale rotation, the chair of surgery, I can't remember his name now, but my dean, he wrote a letter to the dean at the time, and he didn't know that the dean loved me. He wrote a letter to the dean because I felt more comfortable with the people cleaning the floors than with the surgical team. So I would come in the morning and I would speak to them. I would hang out with them. Why? Because they looked like me, and I felt comfort in that. Very few other people at Yale look like me, so I felt comfort in it. So he called me a Malcolm X wannabe in my surgery letter to the dean. Now the Dean Gifford, he didn't know that when he signed off on the letter. So I get the letter, I go in, and the dean says, what's going on, Scott? And I said, Dean, I'm trying to get into ortho. You just torpedoed me. He's like, oh my gosh, this is. I said, yeah, this was me. I had no idea why he wrote all this. And so what Dean Gifford did was he took the letter, and the letter it said some really crappy things. And it was like, Scott, ... was the ... And he pieced together a letter that sounded fantastic, but had a whole bunch of ellipses in it because he took out all of the bad words, and then I got into ortho. My favorite is a couple of years ago in front of the house that we used to have, had fuck you nigger spray painted on the street in front of it. That's vulnerable. When we sold our house, took down all the pictures of me so that our house would sell quicker. Sold our house in 3 hours. This vulnerability, right? So America is the greatest country on earth, and I will never speak badly about America, and I am a die-hard libertarian. I love America. It is truly the greatest country on earth. When people say it's not, leave. Leave. I have no problem saying that. Greatest country on earth. But this is the moment. Can we not have a conversation about perhaps that greatness may differ? That greatness may vary for no other reason than the way someone looks. Can we not have that conversation? Because this is, I think, the crux of the conversation. We have entirely too many people that are thinking it's the same race. It ain't the same damn race. I'm telling y'all that right now. It is not the same race. Why can't we have that conversation? We retreat to our tribes for safety. What I am submitting to everyone is that's totally fine. Learn something about the other tribe and learn something about what your tribe is doing to help or hurt. That's the beauty of our ability to rationally have conversations. We don't. America is the land of opportunity, but that opportunity may differ. In America, you can be anything you want to be. But for a whole bunch of us, that endpoint is something conferred upon us, not something we want. My guidance counselor, I still remember this, it was hilarious. My mom was as mean as my grandmother. Somehow you get grandkids and now she's like a saintly woman. I had no idea. She beat the hell out of us. And now, oh, the baby can touch it. Oh, it's broken, it's okay, I'll buy another one. Mom, you would beat us senseless with this. But anyways, so the guidance counselor doesn't tell me about a college fair. And I had these dreams of going to Georgetown because of Patrick Ewing back in the day. So my mom had other dreams, and she was fed up with everything, and so she said, "You're going to Morehouse." I said, "Mom, I've never been to Atlanta, and it's an all-black school." And she said, "Don't care, you're going to Morehouse." So I applied, got a scholarship, and I remember going into the counselor's office, and the counselor telling me, "You're not ready for college. You should go to," we lived about 3 or 4 miles from the community college in our county. "You should go to the community college." And I remember thinking in my mind, I was just listening, I was, whatever, 17-year-old kid, I didn't know. And, but here is the funny thing about all of that. So I did AP classes and all of those kinds of things. I had a perfect 4.0. I've never gotten a B. Well, that's not true. I got 1 B in college for Calculus 3. Other than that, never gotten a B. Why in the hell wouldn't I make it in college? So we've got a problem in this country that it would be so fun to talk about. So fun to talk about. But we don't. And we let society define us, and we hide behind microaggression. We hide behind these words. This is an actual ad that they produced for collegiate sports. So the white folks get the good stuff, and the black folks get, I guess, affirmation that they're black. I don't even know what this is. And the worst part about it is someone had to sign off on this. This wasn't like it was one person's mistake. Someone had to sign off on this. University of Wisconsin has a homecoming video. They're trying to recruit people. Ain't no people of color in the video. How about this one? So, my ladies of color in the audience, what do y'all think about this? And this is a $70 billion company. That one over there is a video. You can go online and look at it. It's a video. Now, this is the video is that when you use Dove, you can wash yourself. This is a video into that. And again, the worst part of it isn't this. The worst part of it is someone signed off on this. Right? Hey, Bob, this is Jen. I got a great idea for you. We're going to take our product. We're going to wash a black woman white. Holy shit, that's a great idea. Run with it. I mean, who? Right? So, and I'm not trying to hate. I really am not. I find it all interesting. But the beauty of it all is none of us picked our hands. None of us picked our race. None of us picked our gender. None of us picked our height. None of us picked our country of origin. None of us picked any of that. And so many of us think that we did. So many of us walk around thinking that we did, not having the grace to understand or to feel someone else and what they've gone through. So this is data from the AAMC, and I love it because wealthy people make smart kids, apparently, because they're the ones getting into medical school. 80% of the medical students are from the top earners in this country. So that means the other 80, 90% of the population makes kids that just aren't smart enough to get into medical school. That's what this data has to show. So how many of these kids walk around, how many people in this room walk around having mommy and daddy done everything, paved the way, paid for the Kaplan courses, paid for the MCAT courses, made a phone call to a buddy who they went to school with, college with, med school with, grad school with, did all of the things possible. And listen, I'm not vilifying. I make phone calls for my kids in a heartbeat. I'm not vilifying. The difference is my oldest. If that joker ever says, "Oh, I did it on my own," I'm going to beat the hell out of him. I'll beat the hell out of him. The difference is my kids know, they hear on a regular basis what it is that I'm doing. And I am hoping, praying, that they will have the humility to recognize that and not to ever walk in a room and say, I'm here because I worked hard. Please, work hard. You don't work any harder than anyone else. But the issue is, rich people make smart kids. That's the crux of it. It must be. Right? So, and for so many of us, so many individuals, even if we did pick our hands, oh, that deck was stacked against us. That deck was stacked against us. So again, I'm not vilifying. I'm not throwing stones. But in medicine, if you can't legitimately say that you are among the best in whatever your department is, if you are someone who is perennially in your chairperson's office, your program director's office, if you are someone who is always the one that they are talking about, how'd you get in? Because there's someone out there, there's some plumber's kid that wouldn't be the problem resident or the problem physician. How'd you get in? What was it that got you the golden ticket? It's a very interesting question. That is vulnerability. Asking this question is vulnerability. How did you get in? When I was a program director, I never in 5 years got a call from a migrant worker in California asking to get their kid in. In 5 years, I never got a call from prisoners asking to get their kid in. In 5 years, I never got a call from the hood in Greenville asking their kid to get in. Oh, but I got a hell of a lot of calls from white folks asking for their kid to get in. Every year. Why can't we have this conversation, right? So, there it is. So the privilege conversation completely ignores human nature by suggesting other diversity dimensions wouldn't do the exact same thing in regards to equity and inclusion if they were in charge of everything and y'all are in charge of everything. If I was in charge of everything, I'm not in charge, and I'm calling people for my kids. I'm not in charge. Of course I would be doing it. The difference is I wouldn't be lying about the fact that I'm doing it or not recognizing the fact that I'm doing it. Let's recognize it. Let's recognize it. You think George Bush got into Yale on his own? Right? Well, let's recognize it. So this is the last point. You may want to sit down with this. So I think, well, everyone enjoys varying degrees of privilege at some point in their daily lives. I would submit to you, if Tom and I back at Yale went to West Haven to a basketball court, who would get the privilege? Right? Who would get the privilege? If we went to a dance club in North Haven, who would get the privilege? If we go to, my wife and I go to a mall and she is shopping and whatever, who's going to get the privilege? All of us enjoys privilege at some point in our lives. The difference is that I don't give a damn about having privilege in a basketball court because that privilege isn't power. That privilege is I will give up, and I had some wicked handles. I broke ankles. It was impressive. I would give all that up, all of it, to not have been stopped by the police. Take it. Take all of it to not have been stopped by the police. To not have had fuck you nigger painted in my street in front of my kids. Let's have a vulnerable conversation because the privilege that I have has little or no bearing on the creation or the maintenance of wealth. None. No bearing at all. Y'all. Why can't we have that conversation? Not all biases are the same, not all privileges are the same, not all conversations are the same. It is based on a lot of things, and I can assure you that is the conversation that we should have. So this is the end of the lecture. The end of it is, I think it's conversing. That's the end of it. I think it's conversing. I think it's vulnerability. I think it's having a conversation with an individual that you feel comfortable having that conversation and learning something. One of my business partners, or was a business partner during this whole shooting crap that happened in Minnesota, he comes to me and he says, we're talking about race, and he says, well, I think we can both learn something from the other person. White guy. We can both learn something from the other person. About what? About all of this. Okay, so at that time I was 49, 50. So I'm a 49-year-old black dude who has degrees from Yale, University of Chicago, Northwestern, many white institutions, that has found his way onto all white boards, who's married to a white woman from Alaska, who lives in Greenville, South Carolina, but started in Mississippi, and who raised her white son. What the hell are you going to teach me about white people, Marshall? Wait. Sometimes these conversations aren't two-way streets. Say, Marshall, when was the last time you've been to a fish fry? When was the last time you've been to a barbecue? How about a Baptist church where the preacher was black? How about a revival? When was the last time you played golf with a black guy? And we're going to equally exchange? Sometimes conversations are listening experiences, right? Key takeaways. I have none. No key takeaways. I just have fun up here. So your takeaways are based on whatever you bring to the party. I don't know any of y'all except for Tom and Charlie who are here. I don't know what y'all bring to the party. I've learned a little bit about some of y'all. I don't know what y'all bring to the party. How am I gonna bring something that I don't know? 7:30 tomorrow morning I'm leaving. I have no idea what the takeaways are because they're based on whatever you're bringing to. They're based on the lens through which you see life. I have no idea who your parents are. I have no idea where you grew up. I have no idea about any of that. I'd love to learn if I stayed longer. Brown beverages, coffee, bourbon. I'd love to learn, but I don't know. But I will tell you that whatever I have said has to be weighed against your 30, 40, 50, 60 years of experience. And I'm going to tell you that the experience wins every time. Wins every time. So my whole thing was just maybe an aha moment. Words matter. Many of the common DEI terms and the workshops that they have spawned have done more to prevent the vulnerability that's necessary to change than, or necessary to change the hearts and minds and invest and believe of those individuals that truly wish to need to define the debate, identify meaningful goals, and vulnerably work together to achieve them. So can we bravely and intentionally have the right conversations with the right people? Because if we don't, then they'll change. That's it. You can applaud or whatever. So, questions, pushback. And if you ask a pushback question, be prepared for the pushback answer.
So if your fundamental tenet here is that tribalism is inherent in human beings,
Yes.
and I also want to sort of put in a specific relevant context. You have Yaleys and towns that are one of my most frustrated concepts there. That's irrespective of race or socioeconomic background in theory. You have a separation based upon place of living or school.
admitting that we do it. The human mind is a very impressive thing. It will believe whatever it hears uttered. Right? There's a concept of confirmation bias, and I can't remember the exact confirmation bias, but it's a tactic for negotiating. And one of the things you do is you audible something to just throw it out, and it anchors the human mind. Because the human mind will believe things that are uttered. If you ever go to a self-help coach or an athletic coach, what they'll tell you is, think what you're going to do. Say what you're going to do before you do it. And it anchors the mind. The problem that I think, again, in my opinion, we don't allow individuals to honestly claim their tribalistic behavior. Because in doing so, you will be vilified. What I am submitting to you is, at Yale, there is unquestionably a town versus university deal, at least back in the day. I don't know what it's like now. The roots are deep. It's not the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation is, think back to when you were there. How often would a student say to themselves, yeah, this exists, and I want to find out more about why? I know my circle of friends, we did not. We just did our time there and moved on. We need to begin to utter the tribalism in an agnostic sense. It's neither good nor bad, just is, so that we can then begin to discuss the bad parts of tribalism. There's a great book, the autobiography of Malcolm X, and we can debate Malcolm X, a whole different thing, but Morehouse, my days, Afro, so anyways, but in there is this epiphany that he has during his pilgrimage. And during his pilgrimage, has anyone read that book? During his pilgrimage, he noted when he went to Mecca how all of the people congregated with individuals that looked like them. Birds of a feather flock together. Anything that lasts for as long as that statement has to be true. Birds of a feather flock together. He noticed it. But what he also noticed is they were receptive and inviting of other groups. They didn't flock together at the exclusion. What I'm submitting to you is what we do is we flock together at the exclusion, even if we wish to do something with the other group. Because of the manner in which our society exists nowadays, few have the courage or the ability to break the ice to talk about or talk with or talk to the other group. I think it starts with a recognition that we're all tribalistic. My thoughts. What else? Wow.
How are you raising your children about tribalism and what tribalism is?
That's a common question with my kids. I'm not raising them with a specific tribe. I think that is something that is a very interesting conversation because we've been talking about tribalism in the agnostic sense. We have been making references to race, but tribalism isn't just black versus white or Hispanic. There are many people that have multiple diversity dimensions. Tribalism is whatever the individual in question wishes it to be. So my kids are biracial. They can do whatever they want. I don't care. But I will tell you that society cares. So society has already put them into a box. And what I therefore have to do as a father is make certain that they understand that Though society, like that one slide, is saying something, you're the one that dictates what it is that you want to be or do, not society. And Daddy has amassed enough material things to help you in that battle. But I don't care what my kids belong to. As long as they're the best at it, I don't care what they belong to. Not him, that dad. You don't do it on somewhere. What else?
It's not necessarily a question, but it's more thought to add into what you're saying.
Fantastic.
I grew up in Cameroon, in a village, very much in a tribalistic village. And I can say that tribalism is a form of governance, just as we have our democracy. It's not something I think is used to separate us, like you talked about. Tribalism is not my tribe against your tribe, but proximity, and something else born from necessity, born from people working together to meet a common goal. I think that tribalism is adopted in America in a way of accepting and appreciating other people's cultures, giving room for people to express themselves in those cultures, could do great for the economy, do great for our nation as a whole. In the sense, if you go to Africa and you look at the tribalism there, they have trade within each other. They have a continental understanding of progression, and at the end of the day, there is some discourse, tribal discourse, but there is an overarching understanding of one as a nation and one to progress the nation. I think America could adopt some of those tribalistic principles of accepting and understanding each other, and putting the forefront is bettering the nation, not bettering one group of people or our tribe. And just really wanted to touch on the fact of my progression and my doing good for me does not mean doing bad for another. And I think it's, as a millennial and one of these young kids out here saying these words, it's not with the wanting to limit white men. It's for me at least, and the group of people I'm around, and the conscious thinking that kind of a lot of people on right now. It's not to limit white men. I feel like the reason we have a lot of discourse is because white men do feel that the bringing in of others may result in the diminishing of their presence or culture or need or respect. And I think to see this opportunity, we need more hospitals, we need more workers, we need more. There's not a finite pool of doctors needed here or worldwide. So seeing it as trying to compete for the same small group of the same limited pool of jobs rather than an opportunity to educate more people and expand our reach, expand our healthcare and education. And isn't that the end better for our nation? And don't we want to see a world where it's not, like you said, like one person losing their spot so that someone else can come up, but adding more opportunities, creating more other advancement or opportunity for people to get.
So a couple of things. One is the tribalism is a fantastic point, right? And that is what you're talking about is in my mind true tribalism, right? Tribes. What I'm talking about is much more metaphorically than actual tribes with citizenship. So that distinction is noted. It is different. When you're talking about you not, I don't know what the words you use, attacking or whatever, white males, I find that to be very interesting. Because if you ask many white males in private, they will not agree with you. And two very quick stories. One is another business guy. I was giving a lecture and I was just saying, I'm just going to throw some words at you. What do you think? And I brought up some of these words, microaggression, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, so what is business owner, what does that mean? He's like, well, you want me to tell you honestly? I said, of course. So what that means is, who do I have to hire? What do I have to watch in terms of what I say so as not to offend? And there was one other pejorative thing. I can't remember what it was now. The point is that if you put him in public, he'll say all of the right things because he's been to the courses. In private, that's what he feels. And it speaks to my second point. I told him at dinner last night so I was giving a lecture and I was on the stage with the dean of this particular medical school, and the dean went through a beautiful statement, speech, whatever, about the need for diversity and wanting the population to look like the population it's served, and we've got to do more to do this, that, and the other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the lecture was a diversity lecture, and it wasn't forced, so the audience was all women and minorities. There was nothing else in there except for these 4 white dudes who were sitting stage right, so remember them, 4 white guys sitting up there. And when the dean was doing whatever he was doing, you could see the guys pulling out their phones and lifting up their computers, complete checking out. So at the end, I was like, so dude, fantastic. I said, what did you think about what he just said? Then he gave I agree, we need to have, okay, whatever, dude, you're lying, sit down. What do you think? And the guy said, well, I don't necessarily like it, but okay, whatever. The 4th guy says, all right, Dr. Porter, I'll bite. He said, what I heard, y'all don't want me here. I'm married to a white woman, and we have a white son. What I just heard is there's no room in your health care for my white son. Now you shake your head, but look at it from their perspective. It is a zero-sum game. Unless we have a way to increase resources, and maybe, judging by all of this, Utah does, South Carolina don't. So we need to get more blah, blah, blah. Who's going to pay for them? We need to get more space. Okay, who's going to build the buildings? So until we can figure out a way to assign or reassign resources, the system in which we live is a zero-sum game. Regardless of whether or not we like it, it is. Now, I'm not submitting that zero-sum games are good or bad. What I am submitting is that if you play a zero-sum game, especially if you are a fan of game theory, then you need to understand the motivations and the rationale of the opposite competitor. That's what I am saying. And I don't begrudge any of those people that called me to get their kids into my residency. Again, I would do the same thing. I understand the rationale. What I dislike is the rationale or the actions being hidden, and in public, we're sitting around saying, we need to have the people that look like except for my kid. We need to have the blah, blah, except for my kid. We need to get more blacks and Hispanics, except for my kid. That's all I'm saying. So I hear your point. I would submit to you that we need to look at it from the other perspective. If for no other reason, then again, if you're in a game theory situation and you are powerless, you can't go head to head with the powerful. It doesn't work. The powerful can do whatever they want to appease optics, And I have another slide where what we do is we have Noah's Ark theory of diversity. You get 2 of everything on the boat and just let it float. Right? You gotta get 2 Hispanics, you gotta get 2 black people, you gotta get 2 gay people, you gotta get 2 Asian people. You get them on the boat and you let it float. But is that what we want? No, we don't. But we've got to understand and we've got to engage and we've got to talk to them. And it's not about selling out. It's not about any of that. It's about a recognition. We ain't got no power. So let's talk about that. I think. My words. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that part of the problem lies in emphasizing assignment of like a group identity to people, or, for example, saying Latinx and assuming that everybody within that group has the same opinions, experiences, perspectives? So if you have in Latinx, for example, somebody from Cuba who's going to have a very different experience in life compared to somebody in Mexico, and do you think instead, especially as our roots and our heritage becomes much more nebulous and intermixed, as you mentioned, how do you think we can shift towards focusing on emphasizing more diversity and experience, and especially in a profession where problem solving is incredibly important in innovation, having that diversity of experience is probably something that we want to emphasize. How do you think we can integrate that into our admissions process?
So the first point, do the labels hurt? Yes. And it's interesting that you said Latinx. And the reason why I find that to be interesting is the number, and I don't know if you are Latinx, what have you, the number of individuals that I've met in the Hispanic community that call themselves Latinx, very few. Very few. Males or females. Very few. So by even forcing Latinx on these individuals speaks volumes to what we are doing. I think in error. We are fighting over words. And in that situation, a single letter versus thousands of years of patriarchy, of country. So yeah, I think that the labels hurt tremendously because it allows us to hide behind them as opposed to having very good and honest conversations about Hispanics in medicine, Hispanics in orthopedics, Hispanics in the country. We can't debate what's going on in Texas because we're debating Latinx versus Latino. So yeah, I think it does, my opinion, I think it does hurt. What do we do about diversity in orthopedics? Again, I mean that's not answering in the hour. There's a lot we can do. I think we're doing it badly right now. I think we have entirely too much Noah's Ark diversity in orthopedics, and I think that there should be some significant homogeneity in certain metrics in orthopedics. And in pursuit of our diversity, we are getting entirely too much heterogeneity in those particular aspects of orthopedics. And so what I would submit is we in orthopedics need to have a very vulnerable and open conversation about what it is that we are trying to do. Are we trying to cut people, or are we trying to solve social ills? Because those are two totally different things. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, that for me, for orthopedics, when I was in charge of admissions my biggest criteria, my hard stop, did you do anything with your right hand, left hand, and your eyes at the same time? Ever. Once I got over that hurdle, then the other things became important. But I would submit to you that we have a lot of individuals in orthopedics who are decision makers who their first hurdle is, are you a woman? Are you black? Are you Hispanic? And that is a wrong first hurdle. We have a lot of women, blacks, Hispanics that are the sons and daughters of doctors. We have a lot of women, blacks, and Hispanics whose hobby is reading and cooking. Not that that's bad. But reading and cooking didn't help me take out the 23 centimeter sarcoma last week at all. You know what it did? The fact that Charles Porter, 5 o'clock in the morning, every weekend growing up, got me and my brother up to build decks. There aren't many things I can do well. I can sling a hammer. So hand-eye coordination is something that we should have no diversity on. Zero. We have diversity in the specialty. It's called pathology. Right? So
Could one argue that the exposure to that kind of hand-eye coordination in and of itself
absolutely.
that is dominant in?
Absolutely. And that was why I said, are we trying to solve social ills or not? And I have no interest in solving social ills because in the middle of the night, when I want to just go home, I want to have somebody whose mother, father, largely father, had them in the back of the truck at 6 a.m. using their hands and eyes together. And vilify me if you wish, but I'll give you pushback. And one of my pushbacks is, and we did this study a long time ago with this tool that we used. One of my pushbacks is, I'm blessed to have 2 sons and 2 daughters. There is a difference. There is a difference. Oh my gosh, he said it out loud. That's the Biden whisper. Anyways, there is a difference. My boy, from a young age, right now, we have got, from my 11-year-old, I bet we have got 30 or more shanks around the house. This joker builds and carves knives and stuff out of cardboard. He climbs a tree. He saws a tree limb that's about this big with a pocket knife. So he can make some whatever that he saw online. His older sister, if it's above 75 degrees outside, she's not going out there. There's a difference. It's the same family. It's the same yard. And it's been that way since they were there. There is a difference, and we shouldn't vilify the difference. We should figure out, is the difference meaningful to the end product? But that's not what we do. And I would submit respectfully, that's not what women do. Women vilify the fact that there's a difference. I can do anything a man can do. Really? Because I'll tell you right now, my 8-year-old and 11-year-old know that they can't do the same thing. And I gave this one lecture, it was fantastic. And I started, and I said, who in the audience think men and women can do the same thing? And I can do anything a man can do. It's perfect. Big Ohio State football fan. Hate Clemson. I have to like him now because my son's a senior, so I got 8 more months of liking Clemson. Then I'll go back to hating him. I said to these individuals, please call Dabo Swinney and replace his offensive line with 4 women. And the room erupted in laughter. Why? Because they got it. It's a stupid statement. We don't do the same things. The question is not, can you do the same thing as a man? The question is, are the outcomes the same? The manner in which you get there, I don't care what it is. Just get there. One of my favorite residents, she's doing a tumor fellowship, actually, so this is how much we bonded. I couldn't stand her at first. Couldn't stand her, and she knows it, so it's common knowledge. Couldn't stand her. Why? Everything was, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. We were doing an intramedullary nail, and I'm a fan of not scrubbing in, so we're doing this nail, and the rep is, Dr. Pete, you need to get in here. So I'm in there, and I'm watching this fiasco. Wrong guide pin. And I said, so if you just, Dr. Porter, I got it, just, okay. So I go back, we're talking, 10 more minutes go by, still no reamer into the femur. Hey, look, if you just do this, Dr. Porter, I got this, I know I can do it, I got this. Okay. So now we're into probably an hour into this. And I said, hey, if you, Dr. Porter, I said, God damn it, just stop. Everyone in the room, stop. Get me my stuff. You're done. Compare and contrast that when she came back as a 5th year on service. Now, by this time, I'd fallen in love with her. She's fantastic. Called the person she's doing her fellowship with now, and it was fantastic. Love her. She comes on service. We're doing a nail. I got a 3rd year who's 6'5", 240 pounds. She is 5'1", probably 195 to 105 pounds. And she grabs the drill for this particular thing that we were doing, and she literally said, I ain't doing this. Come over here and get this. And I almost had tears in my eyes because she got it. Orthopedics is not a strength contest. Surgery is not a strength, medicine is not a strength contest. Don't compete in areas or in metrics that you're going to lose, especially when those metrics mean nothing to the outcome. She realized she has to compete in the outcome. It's a beautiful thing when she got there. It's fantastic. We need more of that and less of bringing our own baggage to the table, because we do. I can do everything man can do. I can't. You can't. Nor can I do everything you can do. The difference, I don't want to.
Scott, some ORs are starting
Yes.
at 8:30. No, hold on.
Y'all do your thing.
I don't want to stop this. This is going great. I'm just telling you, some people are going to have to get up and go, but house staff and whoever can stay and carry on. And I'm sorry to stop.
No, y'all do your thing. Y'all got to pay for all this. Well, that's right. Yeah, fair point. Fair point. What else?
So if you can acknowledge the men and women are different, right, and have different abilities, and learning styles, and the way we're socialized since birth, etc., I would guess that corporate training is set up for men learners, right? That's how it's been for a long time.
Yeah.
What are we doing, or what should we be doing to make the learning environment as equitable as possible? Why are there more instruments for easier to make use? Why are, are we, is the way we teach surgery biased or
What do you think?
I think there's a lot of instruments that are hard to use because they're too big, they're too heavy. They don't fit my hands, but no one's going to deny me it's a good enough market for it. So that's definitely correct.
So the key word is yes. The key word is yes. Why do we get annoyed? We can't change history. Why get annoyed? There's nothing. I can't change the fact that for the last however many years, males have dominated in fill in the blank. I can't change that. Why get angry about that?
I think the instruments are the easy part, right? We just I think of ways to make it better. The thing I don't know, I don't have an answer is learning styles are different, and then we should be doing more way we teach residents, and that we should be doing something different as we have more female certificate residents. I don't know, but I don't
So
know.
yes, I think. So I'm glad you can see the first point, right? Because the instrument thing, that makes no sense. They're different. Okay. Get with the product reps. Get with the general whomever. And design a better instrument. Right? That's America, that's innovation. But you have to keep in mind there are some physics properties, right? Like how the size they are. Because there has to be a leverage in terms of the way in which we use it. There has to be a certain thickness, a certain strength. Now you can talk about whether or not you need stainless steel. If you go to carbon fiber, you know, you can, but why vilify this? So I'm glad you can see that, right? Because that makes sense. The other part, fantastic. And I do think I've got an N4, but in terms of my own personal vulnerability, an N4. I do think that there is a really difference in male versus female learning. I think that society does have a huge role to play in that. I think that the women have a huge role to play in that. And I think that the answer is going to come, and it comes in leaps and bounds, by having more females on academic staff. That's where the answer is. And so I would wonder how many female staff get rated differently than their male staff partners. I wonder how different their teaching styles are, because my suspicion is not there. But I wonder that. But I think that's what we have to strive. I don't know how to teach differently than the way I teach. I'm 51. I have been teaching now for 18 years. I have a style that is hands-off and lobbing grenades from the back of the room. One of my male residents told me, and I love this guy, this is what hang him out. Minor league ball player. And his thing was, he said, I'm a quarter. And actually, it was his professional soccer player. And I say the sports thing for this. He said, the reason why I think that many of us gravitate towards you is you teach like a coach. I can think of tons of coaches in my life. That's what they were on the sidelines, the bullhorn or whatever, they lob grenade. I love it. Most of us love it. And sure enough, if you have, there's something to that. That's not the way I think many non-athletes, many women were educated or instructed. The exception is how other women athletes. And so I've got another one, she was All-American soccer, and she's out doing drama now in Nashville. Love her to death. Amazing hands. And she got we got some arguments. But so I think that it does have to change, but I don't know how to change it. I need y'all to help me change it. And we have a round number of females on our staff. So I need vulnerability. I need help. I don't know what to do. Not 14-year-old girls. That I got. No, I'm terrible at that. But at least that will happen. So help. What else?
Scott, you as a self-declared libertarian, a lot of what you spoke about, the way I heard it, the way I interpreted it, was attitudinal change, but some of it's got to be policy change, right?
Absolutely.
And so people will promote meritocracy, cartoon you showed with the, with the racetrack, right?
Mhm.
But, the point to meritocracy, you just gotta get a better time.
Right.
But that sort of flies in the face of what I interpret as libertarians, like, you're just gonna let everybody go and see what happens. How do you square those? Or am I misinterpreting those are competing?
I don't know. I don't think that they're competing. I think the dissonance comes in, just like you talked about before, who gets to define meritocracy? That is where I think we need to be having a conversation.
Because the definition of meritocracy in healthcare today is set at all. So that kid who was in that lecture who said about his son, et cetera, the end of that story is that I challenged the audience when he said that you don't want my kids here, or my son here, or healthcare doesn't have room for my son in the future, whatever it was he said. He said it very eloquently. And I said to the audience, debate that. Because that's real. Because I'm not a white dude, I heard it say, zero-sum game, if you want to get 30% of people who are me in that joke, you got a lot less people. So I would say, and knowing the other, I said, so if we said this exact same thing about white folks, y'all would go, no. And I said to him, so let me ask you a question. How do you get the numbers? Just give me your path. Right? And we did this, said so I would said yeah, I said so how do you do that? Said 3. Don't have any okay, influence on that? He said, well, yeah, you might put that paper. So, is it possible that you work hard, but the degree of your work was no greater than anyone else's? And you're here for other reasons. Okay, maybe. And that's so you work hard and you got these scores. Does that mean that because you, with the current meritocracy, did well, but you're at a lower tier med school? So if I am applying to a position and you are my competitor, I think Yale beats this med school. That's a fair point. So meritocracy, I think, is the problem with all of this, is we wrongly define meritocracy. We wrongly, I think, define meritocracy along metrics that help us. I would much rather define it along metrics that help people. I think if you're bilingual, you should go to the top of the line. If you speak Spanish and English in this country right now, top of the line. I think if you have traveled the world and not on vacation, I think you should go to the top of the line. I think that if you did, despite what that person said, I think if you did grow up turning wrenches, you should go to the top of the line. The board is having this deal right now. We're evaluating all these things. One of the things that we're evaluating is, and Jim Kelvin is part of this. One of the things we're evaluating is this simulator, and it is trying to figure out, can we get you guys as residents in a simulation experience before you get into the ORs to get your hands and whatnot working better, I guess. I don't know what it is. And this is the board meeting we just had in New York 3 weeks ago. And they're going about this, and everyone was, oh, my impression was, an interesting study will be to get carpenters, plumbers to do this. I'm dead, I would love to get carpenters and plumbers in the community, just the people that are building these things, bring them into the lab and do the exact same study that the residents are doing and seeing what the results are. I bet money they would operate down their head. I bet money. I bet money that right now, my 86-year-old dad, I put everything in my wallet without even having ever seen a finger. He'd get a disc interlock screw hole faster than anyone in here. I would put everything in my wallet. But that's not part of our meritocracy. That's not, I mean, if dad would not have gotten a 250 or a 260, he wouldn't even look at it. So I think that the dissonance is, that's kind of long, I think the dissonance is that. And I gotta find, if I can find this slide, so, it's too hard, I'll find something else. What else?
Dr. Porter,
Yeah.
in light of this concept of meritocracy, is there a point at which that idea changes? I think there's no doubt that getting into college or getting into medical school, that there are different levels of privilege and opportunity. No doubt about that. But let's say now you're in medical school, is it an even playing field? Or has the playing field evened out more?
No.
Or is there just too much influence from the past?
Yeah. It's not good or bad.
Yeah.
So don't take the fact that I quickly said, no, it's not level, as good or bad. At our medical school, I was given a talk on whatever, and one of the guys said, white guy says, you know, we're all here, very passionate. We're all here. We're all together. We're all starting from zero. This is, you know, all of this stuff is behind us. You made it. You're here, and we're starting from zero. And one of the black residents raised her hand and said, "There's a whole lot of Mercedes in that parking lot to be starting from zero." So we cannot escape the head start that many of us enjoy. What I am submitting to all of us, don't run from it. Admit it. And then maybe help someone else who doesn't have it. But you can't, there is not going to be a time where the playing field is level. So don't look for it. Revel in the unleveledness, because that's where the beauty of conversation is going to lie. If it is level, there's no more reason to have these lectures or have these conversations. It's not level. Another story, this is a great video, I'll play it. Another story is, I was given a talk to a high school class, and as I was coming in, one of the kids, 16-year-old, was laughing that his BMW got sideswiped in the parking lot. So the first thing is he's laughing about it. I mean, so I'm listening to this, and the professor is a great guy. He's the athletic director of the school. So I'm talking to Mike, and he said, and Mike just kind of said, that's he has to be happy. So in the middle of this lecture, in this class, is also their star running back. And I know the star running back class did not or does not have a BMW. So and there's the another player on the football. So I'm doing my little thing, and I finally said, okay, look, I've got it. Dude, BMW. And then he just kind of smiles and says, yeah, I got a BMW. What year is it? And it wasn't old. I mean, it wasn't like brand new, but it was within the last 3 or 4 years. And I said, because I'm a 40-something-year-old surgeon, and I ain't got a BMW. And he kind of chuckled, and I said, so what did you do to get the BMW? He said, sir, I'm just curious, what did you do to get the BMW? And he said, I get good grades. Anyone else in the room get good grades? Anyone, raise your hand. Whoever gets good grades, raise their hand. And a whole bunch of people in the room raised their hand. I said, so good grades wasn't how you got a BMW. Anyone else got a BMW? So he said, well, but I work. Anyone else? Raise your hand. Show your hands. Who works hard? Who works hard? And he raised hand. So what was it that? And he said, well, I don't know. Stop. That's the right answer. You didn't do anything to get a BMW. You picked parents who could afford a BMW. You won the lottery. You picked the right parents. Before you don't pick your parents. Ding, ding, ding. You didn't do squat to get a BMW, dude. Nothing. Just like so-and-so didn't do anything to grow up in West Greenville. Just like so-and-so didn't do anything to have a mom on crack and a dad in jail. But man, we think we did, right? So this is this showing, how do I make this go up there? I don't know. There's got to be some 20-something out there who, because you and I are gonna mess something up.
It's the double-blind study. We're gonna fix the computer.
What else? Yes, sir.
So now that you're kind of,
Good.
One of the older residents has probably been much about where you are as it pertains to things like, I don't know, the people who are around you and code switching and now having money. This is more you see the power.
Cognitive dissonance. Love that. Theory of cognitive dissonance. Fantastic theory that I think underpins one of the reasons why we can't have a good, good discussion about race, because it invokes too much cognitive dissonance. Does anyone know what cognitive dissonance is? Anyone? So cognitive dissonance is the unpleasant sensation that you get when your world beliefs are challenged by something external. And it sets up a cognitive dissonance, right? I am the best. That's how I got into orthopedics. Yet I'm always in the program director's office. I am the best baseball player ever, yet there was an entire race of individuals who weren't allowed to play. So when your worldviews are challenged and the challenge is valid, it sets up cognitive dissonance, which is an unconscious feeling. And what human beings do with cognitive dissonance, they either double down on what they believe. This is scientific, you can read about it. They double down on what they believe. The election was stolen. Here's all the evidence that says it wasn't. I'm doubling down on my belief that the election was stolen. They will pretend as if it doesn't happen. Cognitive dissonance hits them. I didn't even hear it. That's just okay, whatever. They dismiss it. Or they lean into it and they grow. And those are the three things you can do with cognitive dissonance. They lean into it and they grow. I choose to intentionally do the latter with my dissonance. So there is tremendous dissonance with a lot that I have to wrestle with. I have it every time someone says meritocracy. I have it every time the third generation physician, fourth generation physician whose two older siblings are also physicians says, I worked hard, and that's how I got here. I have it growing up, or earlier in my career, I remember I think I told Tom this at Yale, they started when I was there, they got rid of the Black Studies office and they turned it into a multicultural affairs office. And to the dismay of Black folks, but to the jubilation of everyone else. So one of the things they wanted to do is have a potluck dinner. And you could, whatever heritage you have, if you identify, you could bring, like that was the word back then. So whatever heritage you had, you could bring a dish. So the South Asians would bring whatever dish, Vietnamese would bring whatever, Chinese would bring whatever, Italians would bring. I thought it was this big thing, kumbaya moment. And I remember sitting around with Black folks. What the hell do we bring? That was taken from us, right? Cognitive dissonance. So we have this saying in this country, we're very fond of it. We're a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants, right? How many people believe we're a nation of immigrants? Everyone says it all the time. So we're a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants. We are not a nation of immigrants. And I have cognitive dissonance, if not outright anger, every time I hear it. We are 85% a nation of immigrants. Because inherent within immigration is a volitional will to leave one place and go to another. Now, I didn't have a choice. I had to leave. You always have a choice. You always have a choice. You voluntarily left a hell and seek a haven. Volitional will. That is immigration. My family didn't immigrate. And every time I hear we're a nation of immigrants, you completely belittle my family's experience. There was no volitional will. It was this cruise that wasn't so nice. Right? So I have cognitive dissonance there. We're 85%, we're 13% descendants of slaves, not recent immigrants from Africa. I'm talking about chains. And to this day, I still can't watch any of those movies. I can't. We tried to go into South Carolina with my kids, Charleston, tried to go into they have a museum there. A tremendous nation of immigrants. We're not a nation of immigrants. Whenever you say that, you completely dismiss 300 years of our history in this country. And then 2% are Native Americans. They were here. How did that happen? But nation of immigrants. Who does that phrase help? No. That phrase helps. Cognitive dissonance. That phrase makes y'all feel better about what's happening to the Hispanic border right now. We are not a nation of immigrants. We should be stripped from our language. So, let me play this. And I love this video. I'm going to play sound. Thoughts? Anyone ever seen that? Thoughts? That's serious. I mean, this is the whole vulnerability and conversation. I'm curious. Thoughts about that?
And the problem is if you're standing in the front, like if it's $100, you might be able to pick it up. But it's the rest of your life, or it's your kids' educational opportunities. People don't want to take a step back.
Thank you. That is honest vulnerability. And so to that med student who was saying I don't know if she was a student or not, but whoever, she was saying what she was saying, that is what we have to talk about, because you are 100% correct. The people in the front had to be told to turn around. It is not human nature to look behind you. They had to be told to turn around. How many people on the side, on the front lines chose not to run? Did you notice that? How many people upon seeing that head start said, hell with them, I'm never gonna win? Say what?
Almost none of them?
But there were some. There were some, very few. That is, to me, one of the most powerful videos ever. Because it speaks to what we're talking about, and it does so in a visual way, and it's not to offend anyone. It doesn't say that you shouldn't have a head start. I didn't say anything about that. There's nothing about that. It is a recognition of the fact that you do. And when you have this belief that, oh, I work hard to get to where I am, don't disagree with you. You work harder than someone else? Because, and I can tell you, it's pretty damn hard going to college and working full time. It's pretty damn hard. It's pretty damn hard going to medical school and having to pay for your sister's whatever back at home. That's pretty damn hard. And how many of those people got a 220? And now, oh, because orthopedics is 250 or whatever, they aren't going to be a good orthopedist. They're not going to pass their boards. Well, have we asked what they're doing during medical school, why they got the 220? Man, maybe we would find out that this person, once you get all of the other stuff off of their plate, will smoke the boards, which is a binary exam. So I'm not sure why you pass or you fail. You don't barely pass. So, but anyways, so I think that's a very powerful video. Anyone else have some thoughts about it? I love that video. I guess not. What else?
What do you think about affirmative action?
How are you defining affirmative action?
Well,
Do you notice how when I debate people, I want to make certain that we are on the same page with our terms? How are you defining affirmative action?
in my mind, it's trying to look at applicants more holistically and acknowledge that their scores may not be as good if they had less opportunities. And so to change the benchmarks through the scores, give those people a better chance at competing to get in. I think sometimes it's seen as just feeling over that's what you talked about.
Yes. So Noah's Ark theory of diversity, affirmative action, I abhor it. Affirmative action that allows one to slow down and take a more holistic approach at one's application, I think is what we should do. Here is the problem. The majority, could you describe majority as 50 plus 1? The majority of decision makers at the majority of hospitals don't have the lens through which to, I think, properly vet the variables necessary for meritocracy. Does that make sense? One of my favorite, I give this talk to nursing and allied health professionals, and I do something similar to that, Grace, not nearly as elegant as that is done. But the punchline is, if you've never had to figure out rent versus diabetes medicine, how then can you evaluate what diabetes medicine someone should truly be on? Because the new stuff is far out there, right? If you've never had to watch auntie or grandma struggle with this, do I pay rent or do I get my diabetes medicine? Do I live or do I disappoint my physician? Because let's face it, patients want to make us happy. If you've never lived that, how can you, as a microaggression, how can you truly perceive that's what's going on, right? When we label that person as non-compliant, Ms. Jones didn't show up today. She never shows up. Make sure that we send her a letter if Ms. Jones didn't show up. Or Mr. Jones is here, he's 15 minutes late. 15 come. Tell him he has to reschedule. Did you know Mr. Jones takes 3 buses to come see you? You know Mr. Jones called off work, took those 3 buses. The bus only lets off when the bus lets off, which happens to be 15 minutes after the appointment. And we have the gall to not see Mr. Jones. If any of my residents ever called and they had that policy, oh my gosh, I would lose it. But unless you've lived that life, you don't know that. So all of that is very long-winded to say, I have a problem with affirmative action, not in theory, but in practice. When it is the Noah's Ark diversity theory, I have a problem with it. When the metrics of affirmative action are done by individuals who do not understand, but in my very humble opinion, are making metrics to make themselves feel better, i.e., let's get rid of all of the scoring for step 1. Who in the hell is that going to help? Because if it wasn't for the scoring of step 1, I would not have gotten into orthopedics. But, good intentioned people doing stupid things in order to fulfill whatever it is in their minds of affirmative action.
Scott, so I understand it correctly. When you say the Noah's Ark there, you mean quotas?
Written and unwritten. Written and unwritten. I think that, but targets, yeah. And again, do not get me wrong and do not take that I don't think that there needs to be some target to hit to get those individuals that have zero interest in this and only respond to targets involved in the game, right? I'm not saying that it is all one or the other. I am saying that when we have these targets, we need to recognize that there are intended consequences, not unintended, because we can point them out before it happens. Intended consequences with those actions. But
it seems like I agree with that video. There's disparity in terms of where people come from. They didn't choose. Everyone can say they work hard and it's all for them to do. But how do you convince the people in the back of the race that it's still worth running, or the affirmative action practice of their career is feasible and have to do it once we do that? What should be done? I know you're talking, so there's no key takeaways here, but what do you think we should be doing?
So I believe in the 3-foot rule. All you can do is control the 3-foot circle around you. You can't control anything else. If an individual chooses not to run a race, it's not your role to make that individual run the race. What you can control is how you are perceived by these individuals. One of the things that I absolutely just laugh at is our propensity to buy $150 sweatpants, $200 sweatpants, and then say that we're all equal. There is nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequal people. Right? Thomas Jefferson said that, right? And so what I would submit to you is, within your 3-foot circle, look at this in a granular sense and control the 3-foot circle. If you do that, you will find that it is a very painful circle. And what we have done is allow the inability to control life cloud our painful ability to control the 3-foot circle. How many times have we seen that patient in the ER and immediately went negative? How many times have we seen that applicant to our whatever and immediately went negative? How many times have we walked in the mall and seen whatever and immediately went negative? All of those things are within the 3-foot circle. All of those things are within the 3-foot circle. It is so much easier to say, how do we do it? We can't, it's not possible, because that makes you feel better. I have a talk, and one of the slides is, I can't control anyone's zip code, I can't control anyone's parent, I can't control anyone's education, I can't control anyone's anything. I'm not having them come to live at my house. I'm not a foster parent, I'm not doing any of those things. I just am not, that's just not my thing. But, I have tremendous intentionality with looking at my 3-foot circle. And I have bias. I will be the first to tell you, I won't ever say them out loud for fear of vilification, but I don't lie about them. And it's an internal wrestling match that I have every time I see a patient that is within one of those biases. And I don't sit around and hide behind microaggressions or whatever. I know that I am doing it. Ergo, I think that I am intentionally making myself a better person. I don't know if that helps, but yes.
First of all, thank you. This has been really enlightening. One of the things that I've taken from this that I think might help to answer Josh's question is from the beginning of your lecture, you talked about anchoring the mind like a sports coach, where you have to say something to make it happen.
Yeah.
So if the concept is to take your 3-foot circle and control that, you probably also have to say it out loud. Like, for example, for me, after taking away from all of this, I really like the concept of my 3-foot circle as a holistic review of applications as a program director. So now I have to figure out, what does that mean? And I think we talk about holistic review all the time, and for a lot of us it means reading from the front page to the back page of all of the application, which actually is not a holistic review. That's just what you should do if you have 10 pieces of paper, you should read all 10. So what I'm going to change in my head, and I'm going to say it out loud, is I'm going to try and determine where the inequities in someone's upbringing and education were, rather than looking at objective scores. And if I can find them, I'm going to rank them higher because they accomplished at the same level. So what I've done is anchor it in my mind something that I've said out loud, and I think it'll probably make it more likely than I actually do it. So maybe that's something that we can do as a first step in this approach.
Dude, that is, I mean, that is, right? There's no feeling of shame, guilt. You're not trying to wash away white privilege. That is the answer. You've got a 3-foot circle. That is the answer, right? You look at your 3-foot circle through your own lenses, and you don't smell your own shit enough. That 3-foot circle, pretend like smell your own shit. Right? Because you realize it smells pretty rank at times too. What are you going to do about it? I'm not trying to help every single person, but if someone is within my 3-foot circle, then I do what I can. And that's a fantastic, and that's kind of the way that I looked at applications and still do. I'll never forget. I was on the admissions committee for med school, and this marked the end of my admissions committee. So we were reviewing applicants, and on this particular day, there was an immigrant from Africa, and it was one of the countries that's going through civil war, right? And so I go in, and as one of the black attendings, for some reason, I got all the black people on my interviewers. So she comes in, and we, extend or exchange pleasantries, and I'm looking,
So tell me about yourself, and she's going, yeah, and I said, can you do something good? And so she said, well, I'll tell you how I came to America. And she tells this story, harrowing story, of coming to America as a, what is it, you stowaway on a boat. She, whoever was in her village in Africa arranged for her to stay with an uncle that she had never met. She goes and she stays with this uncle. She finds her way into college. She works her way through college, because again, she's an immigrant, mom doesn't have any money. She's living with a man she has never met before. She works her way through college. And she's now sitting at the same spot as everyone else. It was an amazing story. She told me it was like 20 minutes. They had to knock on the door and come get me. That was amazing. Compare and contrast that to the same day, we had an individual, and one of the questions I can do, what's the hardest thing? The hardest thing that she had to deal with was she got looked over during a rush for a sorority. Same day. Now hold on, before you chuckle though, here's the interesting thing. To her, that was the worst. Like I didn't begrudge her. To her, that was the worst thing that happened. Maybe it was 3 generations of Smith women that were in that sorority, right? We don't know why that was the worst. But my point to what you said is, the one from Africa, I went into that admissions committee and fought like a tiger to get her in, because her scores sucked. And so, oh, we got her MCAT. Just, oh, wait. She was a stowaway. She worked her way through. She didn't have a tutor. Oh, but is she gonna make it? Is she gonna make it in med school? She's made it in life. If she didn't make it, if she doesn't make it, it's because we didn't help her make it. It has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with us. She didn't get it. But it wasn't from a lack of trying. So, yeah. I think you guys have to operate or take care of patients or something.
Thank you very much for taking like greater than 2 days out of your life. No, this was, as promised, thought-provoking, and I think everybody here learned a lot and will continue to chew on this in the coming days. So we very much appreciate it. Thank you.